Israel and Trump have very different interpretations about what happened in Iran today. Trump may well have decided that I will give this bone to the Israelis. You can go and attack the Iranians. If they come back to the dialogue table, he will keep the leash on the Israelis and prevent them from attacking the Iranians.
So I suppose my first question to you is why now?
I think that if you were to put yourself in the position of the Zionists and of the Americans sitting in the White House, 1 year ago, Iran was in control of Syria, it was in control of Lebanon, in Syria via the Assad regime, and in Lebanon via its proxy Hezbollah. Today, Hezbollah has been significantly diminished in terms of its capabilities, and the Assad regime has been toppled. Iran's arm is no longer as long as it used to be, and it's no longer as strong as it used to be. From the Zionist perspective, Iran now has its back to the wall. Iran now is unprecedentedly weak. This is the time now to really hit home the point and try to diminish Iran's capabilities in order to prevent it from ever being able to establish such a reach again. And I think the Zionist argument has been beyond just Netanyahu's desire for war. The Zionist argument has been that given that we now have this window of opportunity in the region to reshape the region, to reshape its borders, to bomb whoever we want without any consequence from any of the Muslim leaders or the like, why don't we continue to bomb Iran's nuclear facilities? Why don't we continue to bomb Iran's airports and military capabilities and render it into a country that is unable to do anything? And I think from the Israeli perspective, given that the Iranians have been trying to develop, the Iranians say they're not trying to develop a nuclear weapon, but even if the Iranians were, on the basis that Israel should not be the only power allowed to have a nuclear weapon given its antagonism towards the Iranians, the Israelis believe we have to prevent Iran from having a nuclear weapon, because if it has a nuclear weapon, then that compensates for Iran's inability to control Syria or Lebanon or any of these other reach. The Americans, however, are more hesitant, primarily because Israel doesn't have the power on its own to diminish Iran's capabilities. Israel is only able to attack a regional power with US support. Without US support, Israel does not survive in the region. Israel collapses within a few weeks. Israel is unable to stand against any of the regional powers. So Israel needs the US to be on board in order to attack the Iranians. And here is where there is division amongst the US powers. There are some who believe that this is the golden opportunity, that we should attack Iran and Iran should be diminishing its capabilities, the neocons and the hawks and the like. The other side, however, the MAGA, America First, and even other advisors in the past under the Democrat administration, argue that even if there is a possibility that they could permanently paralyze the Iranian military capabilities, it would cost a lot of money, a lot of American soldiers, and there is no guarantee that they would succeed. And given that context, it's unlikely that the American population would support such an endeavor to diminish Iran, primarily because for many in the American population, they've never met somebody from Iran who is necessarily antagonistic. Iran, many of them can't even point to it on a map, and many are unsure or unconvinced about any imminent danger that Iran might pose. And that's why we're seeing many on the American right, whether it's Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson or even Matt Walsh and these others who've come out very heavily against these latest strikes that have taken place on the Iranians. In light of this difference, the question therefore is, why now? What brought these two conflicting ideas together, the idea of going against the Iranians and the American reluctance over the price they need to pay, has to do with Trump specifically. It's unclear to what extent Trump actually supported the initiative, or to what extent he planned it, or to what extent he's going to allow the Israelis to go. What is clear is that when Trump began the latest round of negotiations with the Iranians over a nuclear deal, he said initially that Iran has 60 days to agree to the deal. Today, Trump tweeted, is the 61st day. One of the reasons for Trump's frustration is that Iran is now digging its heels over a particular point that Trump has changed his mind on. In particular, the issue of how much enrichment is Iran allowed to have. How do you allow Iran to have a deal by which you afford it the right to enrich uranium for civilian purposes, but you limit the enrichment to prevent them from having a nuclear weapon? Initially, there was a certain percentage, whether it's 2 or 3%, I forget the exact number. But when Trump went to the region expecting them to talk about Gaza, but found them instead talking about the Iranian threat and the need for security apparatus and the need for a guarantee of a NATO-style security agreement against the Iranians. Trump and Witkoff appeared to have returned from the region, and whatever they heard from the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Qataris, and the other countries or diplomats they spoke to, they changed the goalpost. They moved it from that 2 or 3% to 0%, something that is unrealistic to ask of any particular country. And all of the talks, the progress that was being made, the Iranians suddenly dug their heels in and they said, this is unrealistic of you to demand of us. But there was no indication when Iran began to stall in the negotiations that Trump would use force. And the proof is that the Omani foreign minister, Boussaidi, tweeted just yesterday or the day before, we're recording on the day just after the night that Israel attacked the Iranians. The Omani foreign minister said that on Sunday, the Sunday coming, that the latest round of talks was going to take place in Muscat, and there was no indication from Washington or Tehran that they wouldn't attend, suggesting that from Donald Trump's perspective, the Israelis would have presented an argument to him in saying, we want to go to war with Iran. He would have said no. We need to go to war with Iran and take advantage of their unprecedented weakness. Syria now is out of their hands. Lebanon now is out of their hands. Let's hit the Iranians. Trump said, I'm not spending the money. I'm not using American resources in order to attack. What I think the compromise was, Trump said, given the Iranians are stalling on the deal, the Iranians are negotiating with me as if they still have Syria and Lebanon. And the Iranians don't have the power or authority to debate with me on the demand that I've made regarding their enrichment. And if the Iranians think they can negotiate with me on this, let me show them what happens to them if they choose not to sign the deal. And I think what Trump has done is, if he's kept Israel on the leash and said to them, I'm the one preventing Israel from attacking, which is true, I'm going to loosen the leash a little bit. And the Israelis went in and killed a whole host of senior Iranian officials to say to the Iranians, you're not as strong as you think you are. This negotiations is not between equals. I am saying to you, I'm giving you a way out, a way of peace. You don't negotiate with me on this. I'm giving you the paper. You have to sign that particular paper. What has been devastating for the Iranians is not just the diminishing of Hezbollah in Lebanon. Hezbollah, which has come out and said, we will not be retaliating on behalf of the Iranians. We will not initiate an attack on the Israelis because they don't want to have the same bombardment that came beforehand. The militias in Syria, the Iranian militias, now no longer operate in the way they used to under Ahmad al-Shara's government. What's been devastating for the Iranians is the precision of the Israeli strikes. They killed Ali Shamkhani, one of the senior negotiators on the nuclear deal, one of the most senior members of parliament in Tehran. They killed, I think, about 5 scientists, senior scientists associated with the nuclear program. They killed some of the senior leaders of the IRGC, of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. They've been able to kill people who are so senior in what deemed to be precision strikes, which suggests that the intelligence that the Israelis have on the Iranians is something the Iranians never knew the Israelis had. There's been an intelligence leak. More than that, the Israelis are publishing videos that suggest that a lot of the drone strikes from inside happened from inside Iran, meaning Israel has been able to gather the capabilities to be able to penetrate Iran itself and then launch the drones and then go and attack these people in their homes. And the proof that the Iranians were caught unguarded is that even as Trump announced that he would withdraw officials from the region and the US ambassador indicated there was an attack coming, the Iranians did not believe Trump would attack them. The Iranians believed that Trump's no war policy, Trump was bluffing, Trump was flexing, and the proof is Ali Shamkhani, who probably should have expected he would be on the target list, was sleeping at home. A lot of these people were found sleeping at home, indicating they did not perceive that the threat was genuinely imminent, suggesting that whatever assurances they got from Trump, they believed that Trump would not allow the Israelis to do so. And this is what leads me to conclude that while the Israelis are hoping that this becomes an all-out war, Trump may well have decided that I will give this bone to the Israelis. You can go and attack the Iranians, but I don't want an all-out war that ruins my deal. And Trump's tweet has suggested if they come back to the dialogue table, he will keep the leash on the Israelis and prevent them from attacking the Iranians. And more than that, the US ambassador to Turkey tweeted today in a very ironic way. He tweeted the famous quote of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, in which Muawiyah has a famous saying, if a lash works instead of the sword, I'll use the lash. And if my tongue works and I don't need to use the lash, I'll use my tongue. And if all that remains between me and my brother is a hair, then I will do everything to make sure that hair doesn't break. Suggesting no matter how bad things get between us, we call Sharat Muawiyah, no matter how bad things get between us, there's always the room for the US ambassador to Turkey tweeted today that the hair of Muawiyah is there, it exists between Iranians and the Americans, suggesting that this might be a one-off, provided the Iranians come back to the table and they agree to Trump's terms. Before I walked in here, I saw a report. Trump tweeted or wrote on Truth Social or whatever social media platform he uses. He said the Iranians are now talking to me. I'm in communication with the Iranians, suggesting the Iranians are saying to Trump, what can we do to de-escalate? How can we negotiate around this? But the biggest devastation for Iran is, whereas before they could retaliate with some missiles or the like, their military capabilities have been so diminished, it's unlikely they will be able to retaliate in the way that they would want. And there is now a debate taking place on Iranian social media which says, should we be retaliating in the way that we would like? Or is this perhaps time in which we retreat, we rebuild our strength, we make some sort of temporary peace, and we rebuild for another day until we're strong enough to actually engage and actually retaliate to the Americans?